Are you sick and tired of watching individual reviews and listening to people ramble on for 20 minutes about a game you just want the score for? Want to see me go through and crap on or gush over a huge amount of solo board games all in a single video? Well, you are in the right place. I've been working on this video since I made my solo gaming documentary almost a year ago. If you haven't watched that video, please do. I promise you'll love it. I'll be tier ranking as many solo games as I can that I played, going through almost about 60 games, all coming from the People's Choice Top 100 solo board games on Board Game Geek. So if there's anything missing that I have to try, just give me hell in the comment section. All right, we have tons of games to get through, so we should get started. And we'll start this list with Tidal Blades 2, Rise of the Enfolders. Tidal Blades 2 is a cooperative campaign dungeon crawler where players control characters across a campaign using a card placement system where you activate entire rows and columns of your personal Nexus grid for movement, attacks, and abilities. There's a lot to like about this game. The map changing sort of mid-game is a lot of fun, and like Jaws of the Lion, I just don't want to go back to these like giant unruly map tiles. Plus, the art is brilliant in this game. The whole thing is just, it's very aesthetically pleasing. It's very bright, it's very vibrant. To the mechanics, the card placement system is an engine builder, and it works really well narratively during the battle because you kind of build your power over time with each successive card, making you, the player, feel powerful and clever for getting that perfect power scale correctly. This is one of the few campaign systems I actually completed and really enjoyed. It's not that long, but that's fine. It's not as cumbersome as some of the other campaign games with their friggin' gigantic boxes. This one feels more tightly focused and constrained. And it comes in at a more modest price point in comparison, again, to those other bigger games. This is a quality solo experience that I, of course, featured in my solo gaming documentary. I'd give this one an A tier. This is a very, very good game. And next is Mage Knight. Mage Knight is a fantasy game where you control a Mage Knight exploring a modular map, fighting monsters, recruiting units, and conquering cities, all while managing an incredibly tight hand of cards. This, of course, is the solo board game. It's a game that even when you play with other players, you still kind of feel like you're playing by yourself. It is one hell of a complicated puzzle, and I've compared this game to Heroes of Might and Magic a lot and talked about it a ton on this channel in various videos, but for good reason. It perfectly emulates the core of that experience. You're running around a huge fantasy map, exploring the area and raiding buildings and recruiting troops, all while doing combat and leveling up. It's a blast, and I'm kind of happy that it lasts a very long time because I feel it's one of those few games that earns that playtime. Because it's basically this brilliant fantasy sandbox game where when you're by yourself, you seem to care a lot less about time and just enjoy the experience and all the leveling up and adventuring. Plus, it has none of the downtime you experience playing multiplayer, so you're constantly having a great time trying to plan out the perfect combination of cards in your relatively small hand because the game is it's just mechanically superb. It just feels amazing, perfectly optimizing each turn and pulling off exactly what you want to accomplish for the round. It is very tactical. It is one of my favorite games, and even solo, it's amazing. This is an easy S tier. We'll start off strong here. And next up is Turing Machine. Turing Machine is a deduction puzzle game where you determine a secret 3-digit code by querying a set of punch card verifiers, each telling you something about how your guessed numbers compare to the hidden code. I'm not the biggest deduction fan. Kim likes this stuff a lot more than I do. Playing this game on my own sort of felt like doing a Sudoku while I'm on the toilet. It's fun for a bit, but it's not something that I would do for an extended period of time, because that's how you get hemorrhoids. Put that right on the back of the box. But the solo solving here it's perfectly fine. Since there's no meaningful multiplayer in this box anyway, you get the satisfaction of cracking the code, regardless of whether or not someone is sitting beside you. Lots of other pluses here. There's no setup, tons of puzzle variety, both official and unofficial, and sessions are usually like less than 20 minutes. My only issue is that it got a little repetitive after a few plays within the week that I played it. But if you like puzzles, this is one of the better games out there for solo play. I would give this one a B, but I think if you're a big puzzle fan, I could see this being an S tier game for you. And next is Dragon Eclipse. Dragon Eclipse sees players controlling dragon heels, exploring a world, completing quests, and building up power across a campaign, all in an effort to collect as many dragons as possible. There is a ton of joy in watching your Pokemon, I mean dragon, sort of evolve over time and get stronger. I think that is a big appeal of this game, which is obviously aided by all the different dragon types that are all fairly meaningful in their variety and in their playstyles. They all felt very unique, which is nice. Few issues though, setup is a bit of a nightmare, which for a solo game isn't something you want. And sometimes it feels like the weight of the game isn't worth the setup. Like, I'm fine with a heavier game requiring more, like Voidfall or Mage Knight that I talked about. But Dragon Eclipse is a fairly light, so that's just important to note, I think. And while the beginning of the game is a blast, over time it felt like things were getting a little repetitive. Like even the first mystery in the town didn't feel like it went anywhere. And the longer I played, the more it felt like I stopped caring about the story, because it felt like it kind of felt like the writer stopped caring. But the battles are pretty fun mostly, and it felt like a good puzzle. I especially enjoyed taming the Mistlings, and the game did have me feeling like that sort of Pokemon joy and obsession where I felt like I needed every freaking Mistling I came across on my team. I think I would give this a C. It's a bit disappointing. It's not what I expected, but it's not bad. It's fine. And next is Spirit Island. Spirit Island sees players taking on the role of elemental spirits defending an island from colonizing invaders. I don't think I enjoy this as much solo as I do multiplayer. I like the collaborative effort and multiple spirits, whereas here, even when I'm playing two-handed, it just didn't hit the same way and became a little cumbersome at times. And partially because of something I actually really love about the game, which is the variability of the impact of each of the different species. It gets really tough playing two super powerful entities, each with very different and unique power sets. But man, if you want this challenge, this game is an obvious ask for you, especially solo player. And that's because this game has a very high skill ceiling. It's really fun playing it over and over and getting significantly better at the game each time, despite the repetition of the colonizers' actions, which honestly is kind of the low point in this game for me. Although the scenarios do help with that a lot, and the different adversaries, there is endless variability here that makes the game very enjoyable. I've talked about this game a lot on this channel, like a cooperative video and the solo documentary. So I think we'll leave it here and we will give it an A. Yeah, I like it better as a cooperative experience, but it is a fantastic game. And next is Marvel Champions, the card game. Marvel Champions is a living card game where you build a deck around Marvel heroes and face off against a villain. Each turn, you play cards to attack, thwart schemes, and defend against villain activations, while flipping between your hero and alter ego forms to manage resources and recover. Now, I had to play this a few times on Tabletop Simulator since I no longer own the physical copy of the game, but that also meant that I got to include a bunch of expansions that I never owned. Regardless, there is an insane amount of card variety in this game, and it felt really good going through all the different cards on my own, sort of taking my time to understand the quality puzzle in front of me, deciding which to use to pay for other cards and what cards I need for the round. It's a fun challenge to be faced with, especially deciding when to flip to your alter ego, which felt like a way harder decision solo. But when you pull everything off, you feel really damn clever. There's nobody to celebrate that cleverness with you, but you sort of bask in your own cleverness glow solo. The villain phase is always the part I found a little boring. It's kind of that way in a lot of these games, especially with only like 3 or 4 in the base set. You're mostly just flipping a card, crossing your fingers, although I suppose that criticism could be put against most card-based cooperative games that have an event deck, but this one especially felt like a little swingy most times, and the hero pool felt off sometimes with other players at the table to make their abilities, without other players at the table to make their abilities better. And I'm happy I played it online since it did most of the painstaking bookkeeping for me, which I have never been a fan of. But playing solo did give me more time to sort of look at my deck and customize and learn the heroes better. I honestly enjoyed this one a good amount more when playing it by myself than I did playing with others. I think I would give this a C. No, I'm in a good mood. I'm gonna give this a B. It's a B game. It's good. Next is Arkham Horror, the card game. Arkham Horror is a living card game where you build an investigator deck and work through narrative campaigns. Each session, you explore locations, gather clues, fight monsters, and make story decisions. Like Marvel Champions, I enjoyed this one more solo than multiplayer, though I still think it's a solid solo cooperative game. I found myself getting a bit more immersed in the story and sort of just reading every card, since I never felt like I was on someone else's time. And I'm happy I did, because each change in the scenario and objective felt more organic and more like I was playing an actual story in a book or a film. It helps that the choices in the game are permanent and more meaningful than other games like this, since a lot of the decisions you'll make in one game will sort of just carry over, like a good proper campaign. Resource management also felt a little more challenging, given that it was just myself, although I did miss the fun of making someone run diversion while I go and do something else. Here it's just you, and the monsters feel far more they feel a bit more frightening than relying on a group to assist you. Plus, I had nobody to blame but myself, and when things go wrong, and self-reflection is never fun. But this game isn't without its flaws. Bad luck really makes this game feel like you had no chance of winning before you even made a decision, which really sometimes strips the agency away from players, and it kind of sucks. And even when playing solo, this game does take a bit of time. But it's still a great game, and I'm happy that I own it now. I own the newer set now. I think the old base set was garbage. I think this newer set is a bit better, although it might be because I've also started including expansions. Either way, it's an A tier. This is an A tier solo experience. Next is Dune Imperium. Dune is a worker placement and deck building hybrid set in the Dune universe. You play as a house leader deploying agents to locations across Arrakis and the Imperium, building your deck to acquire influence, troops, and resources. Okay, let me get this out of the way. Dune is an amazing game. It's one of my favorites. The solo experience, however, no, not as much. While this is a pretty solid, bot deck that did create a good amount of pressure, it just doesn't fully capture the full diplomatic tension of multiplayer. Some of this game's best moments are making decisions that impact other players. The game sort of just needs those other players to be good. But the bot itself is okay, although it did feel swingy and strange sometimes. Like, it doesn't use resources, which is cool because I don't have to manage it. But that just means that it comes down to sort of luck of the draw. And if the AI ends up putting their worker in a good spot, yeah, with a human I can anticipate what they'll do. But here it feels more random. But once you learn the deck a little, I guess you can plan for it a little better. Oh, also I had to run two bots, which just felt a little silly. Yeah, I love this game as a multiplayer game, obviously, but as a solo game, it felt very lacking. Not necessarily bad, but just it's sort of lacking. I can't see, nobody would buy this for the primary purpose of playing solo. I would give this a C tier. Yeah, it's worth trying if you own it, but I didn't think it was very good. Next is Final Girl. Final Girl is a solo-only horror game where you play as the last woman standing against a killer. Each session, you explore a location, rescue victims, find weapons, and manage your hand of cards to survive long enough to turn the tables and take the killer down. I, of course, did a mini review of this one in the solo gaming documentary, and it was a really pleasant surprise. It's always nice playing a game that's designed exclusively for solo, because it just means that there's no mechanical sacrifices required during the adaptation, if that makes sense. And it helps that the theme is super cool, one in which I have a personal affinity for. Not that I'm a killer or anything, or a psycho, just that I like horror. That's all. I'm not a killer. I will admit the theme does a lot of heavy lifting here, and if you're not interested in horror films, I can't really see you enjoying this one. But for me, this is kind of the perfect game to play solo. It also helps that it's super quick. There are loads of content out there. I only have 2 expansions so far, and they've already given me a good amount of plays. Some of the scenarios, though, that I have played so far do feel kind of luck dependent, and this game is swingy, like probably no other game. But here, I sort of accept it, like, given the theme and short playtime, I would still give Final Girl I would give this a solid A. This is definitely, yeah, this is an A tier game. This is a solo game that every solo player needs to experience once, and I'm sure most of you probably already have. And next is Imperium Classics. Imperium is a civilization card game where you develop a nation from a barbaric tribe to a vast empire. The automa system here is definitely good, designed by, of course, one of the best, so it makes sense that it's good. It generally feels like competing against a rival civilization rather than a bot doing completely ass random things. And to be honest, there wasn't a ton of interaction in the multiplayer game anyway, so perhaps solo wasn't really that hard to pull off. That said, I do sort of miss having someone to compete with for cards and sort of race against, and it is nice bashing on someone now and then. Without that conflict, with a real person, the game does, it loses a little in the solo translation, and the race kind of feels more stagnant and sort of anticlimactic when you're not racing against another human being. Still, it's a great game with many different factions that feel so distinct and cool. My favorite is definitely I think they're called the Eskimos, and how they sort of play with a change of seasons to their advantage. But all the factions are really damn clever, and they really do make this game what it is. I would give this game a solid B tier. I don't think you'd be disappointed to buy this game purely for solo, but I do prefer it as a multiplayer game, despite the fact that it is a little solitary at times. And next is Too Many Bones. Too Many Bones is a dice builder RPG where you play as a Gearlock, a fantasy creature whose unique skill dice represents your character's abilities. Each day you face an encounter cards, level up your dice, and work towards defeating a powerful tyrant at the end of the campaign. Now you'd think because I really enjoy Elder Scrolls, I would just love this one, but I really don't. Don't get me wrong, the dice building it's super innovative, and unlike a lot of these types of games, you could play this true solo, which is always nice. I should distinguish here, I don't think I have yet. In case you're not sure, true solo means you don't have to control any other characters, and two-handed means that you have to control two characters. So in Spirit Island, you play that two-handed and you control the water spirit and the earth spirit. But the narrative here is non-existent. And I guess as I play by myself, the experience just feels like a not too interesting puzzle. And some of the tyrants, they don't seem as well balanced when you're playing by yourself. I think I prefer this one with a partner, but all in all, it's a fine game. I would give this, for its solo game, I would give this a C. I know it's going to upset some people because I know there's a strong foundation of a community for this game. But yeah, it's not me. It's not me. You can give me hell in the comment section. I promise I won't ignore you. Maybe. And next is Ark Nova. Ark Nova is an engine builder zoo management game where you build and populate a zoo using action cards, sponsor cards, and conservation projects. Now you all know I love this game, and I played a lot on Board Game Arena, and with Kim. So I was pretty excited to try the solo version. I mean, it's not like this game has loads of interaction anyway, and thankfully there is no bot, at least not how I played. You're just trying to score big, which is kind of fun sometimes, although the fun is facilitated by the fact that it's already an incredibly solid efficiency puzzle with a ton of variability and different synergies to explore every single game. But of course, even if the game is sometimes described as solitary play, I did miss the extra player to bounce off of and sort of race against for certain awards. And the teardown in the setup, it's a bit cumbersome when you're only playing by yourself. But, it still has all the Ark Nova charm that I love, like that opening draft of cards, which somehow manages to replicate that kind of feeling I'd get, ripping open a booster pack of Magic and drafting from that. Although, yeah, here it felt a little more hollow knowing there wasn't an opponent that I could outclass in that draft, which is it's unfortunate. I don't know, it was fine, and the scoring system and the lack of opponent made it feel like less like a race, which is what Ark Nova secretly is. Ark Nova is a race, and to do a race by myself, it's an S tier game, but I think the solo play is a C tier. It's fine. And besides, you shouldn't be playing this solo anyway. You should come find me on Board Game Arena, and I will beat you there. Or I'll try at least. Next is Lost Ruins of Arnak. Lost Ruins is a deck builder and worker placement hybrid where you lead an expedition to a mysterious island, excavating ruins, researching artifacts, and fending off guardians. Even when playing solo, Lost Ruins maintains that nice pace and ramp up like the original game, where every single turn you're agonizing, wondering if you made the right and most efficient decision for the round with the limited amount of workers and actions that you have. And it obviously maintains that cool feeling of exploration as you find out, you find where you're sending your workers to and what monsters you'll have to fight for the round. You get this wicked sense of discovery, which I'm pleased to say was also present in the solo game. The bot is fairly easy to control, which is great for a medium weight game, and it basically just gets in your way and keeps the card row moving. Plus, you get two different collections of tiles that you have for different difficulty levels. That's for the bot. I'd advise just going straight to the harder one, since the first one felt a little too easy. And at least the bot isn't completely random here, really, because you know where the bot is going to be going, and you sort of plan for that, which in a way does make the game enjoyable because it's just It's just giving you another thing to consider and plan efficiently around. But the predictability might upset some people because it is kind of fun figuring out your real life opponents and sort of like sussing out where it is they're going to go. I would give Lost Ruins of Arnak a B. I haven't played the Missing Expeditions. I do have the expansion. Let me know in the comments section if I'm like really missing out. If you think it would go much higher than a B if I tried out Missing Expedition, which I should. I should try that out soon. And next is Flamecraft. Flamecraft is a worker placement game themed around dragons running a fantasy village. You place dragons at shops to gather resources, enchant locations, and score points through card abilities. What a steaming pile of horseshit this game is. Now, I'm not the biggest fan of the multiplayer game, but at least it managed to keep me awake while I'm playing. The automa here is fundamentally basic, and it doesn't in any way, shape, or form replicate an actual player. This is one of those games where it feels like the solo mode was just sort of bolted to the game as a lie to slap on the back of the box. You know what I mean? To sell a few copies. Sort of like when it tells you like play time or how many people it plays. Now, your goal is to get a certain amount of points, the total. I don't remember how much, and it doesn't really matter because you won't give a damn either after a single play. But because you're not trying to really achieve much, and that winning threshold is the same every game, you're going to get bored of this really quickly, as a challenge will essentially disappear at some point. The game tries to make you come back with what is essentially an achievement system, but achievements are not enough to keep players engaged. They weren't enough to keep me engaged. The actual gameplay has to be good to make me continue striving for these rewards and these these unlocks. Yeah, it is a super repetitive and awful, and I hate it. Man, I give this a D tier. If it wasn't for that cutesy crap theme, I think a lot more people would come down hard on this game. I think that cutesy theme is like this like skin mask the game wears to hide the fact that it's so bland and derivative. Yeah. I'm just telling you how it is. We don't do constant positivity here. I don't know if this is your first video, welcome. This is not what we do here. Sometimes it's like glowingly passionate in one way and glowingly passionate in the negative way. You get a bit of both. And next is Gloomhaven. Gloomhaven is a dungeon crawler campaign where you control mercenaries leveling up through scenarios. You run around the dungeon, attacking, getting stronger, and managing a hand of ability cards against autonomous enemies driven by a behavior deck. Now, this is one you have to play two-handed, which some of you might not like. I'm not the biggest fan, but it makes the experience significantly better. The enemy system in Gloomhaven is very good. It makes the game a very solid little puzzle where each run through the dungeon feels interesting and enjoyable. That, of course, is combined with the typical Gloomhaven praise, like, you know, really well done card management and super interesting and unique classes. And of course, there is something to be said about playing a campaign games on, like, by yourself, since you shape the story, and the story here is okay. It's not great. Gloomhaven has never been known to have the best story, but it's certainly serviceable, and it is more enjoyable, I think, by yourself. Because whenever I'm with somebody, I never want to read text from cards because I feel like I'm wasting their time. So here, the only person's time that's being wasted is mine. But I do sort of miss having the other player to bounce ideas off and assist in combat. But Gloomhaven it still works beautifully on its own. I would give this an A tier. This is a game where you could buy for solo play or buy for multiplayer, and either way you play, you're going to be happy. It's an S tier game for me for multiplayer, but as a solo game, it's an A tier. And next is Robinson Crusoe. Robinson Crusoe is a brutal cooperative survival game on a deserted island. Each round, you build shelter, gather food, hunt, and explore while managing morale and wounds, all against an escalating event deck and unique scenarios of bad crap you have to deal with. Now, this is a game that's more or less tailor-made for solo play, as a lot of cooperative games have a tendency to be, since the interaction here is super low and the actions you perform are all really simple enough to play two-handed. So Robinson is awesome and really immersive because all your decisions feel like these sort of like life or death situations, and there's just constant suspense. The island feels insanely hostile and demands your full attention every round, and I really love how the game managed to have decisions made in game come back to sort of haunt you later. You know, like you go hunting or something and then you find a snake and the snake poisons you, and if you don't suck out the venom or whatever, the poison will come back. It's very clever, and all that bad stuff you get pummeled with in this it sort of appeals, you know, it's like part of that cinematic charm that the game is able to convey. And it makes, and that ability to like decide what it is you want to do for the round and what troubles you want to tackle does make you feel like you have a lot more agency than perhaps you mechanically do. This is a super hard game, but I think that difficulty is really a part of its appeal. And it's sort of what managed to win me over. Yeah, this Robinson Crusoe is an S tier game. It is obviously an S tier game. Fantastic game. Next up is Aeon's End. Aeon's End is a cooperative deck builder where a team of breach mages defend the last city of Gravehold from powerful nemesis. This one I went into true solo since I had read it worked pretty well, and that's typically, like I said, my preference. And a single mage did seem to fare well against a nemesis, but it all felt well balanced throughout the entire game, where I never felt like I was getting destroyed or also just like walking away with the victory. That said, the nemesis often felt a little repetitive, and that fixed market isn't something I really enjoyed here. Despite randomizing it between games, I get that it provides a different little puzzle you have to sort of work within, work with what you got. But what I had to work with most of the time just wasn't enjoyable, and it felt a little like I was losing agency as a player. But I know I'm in the minority on this mechanic, since that sort of predictability on your draws is partly why people really enjoy Aeon's End. I feel there are some pretty cool decisions you can make while you're ordering and discarding and stuff, but sadly less interesting when you're building your deck. I would give this a C. It's fine. It was fine. I didn't hate it, and this is an improvement over what I gave it in a different video. I think I gave it like a D or an F or something because I played it with 4 players. I do think this is better played solo or maybe with one other player, but it was fine. It was a fine game. And next is Terraforming Mars. Terraforming Mars is an engine-building tableau game where you play as a corporation terraforming Mars by raising temperature, oxygen, and ocean levels. I'm not going to prattle on about how much I enjoy Terraforming Mars. I played a lot on BGA, and it's awesome. You likely already played it yourself, so you know whether or not you like it. And it's a notoriously solitary game, and yet what's funny is that you do feel the absence of players here when you're playing by yourself. There are no milestones or awards in the solo version, at least the solo version that I played, and racing for those particular milestones or planning the game around specific awards, I realize it's a big part of my enjoyment of this game. There is some serious tension there, and a big reason why I actually pay attention to other people's turns to anticipate what they're gunning for. The entire experience just sort of lacked that same level of depth and replayability. I kind of miss those take that cards that you sort of sit on for most of the game to deliver in like that clutch moment. It felt like there was no strategy to the entire ordeal because I just needed to get the right cards out to push oxygen, water, and heat. I didn't care about the cities. It felt way more dependent on luck than the regular multiplayer game, as I felt that I was just sort of at the mercy of whatever it is I drew. None of this felt like Terraforming Mars is what I'm trying to say. It's an S tier game, but as a solo experience, I'm giving it a D tier. Next up is Cascadia. Cascadia is a tile and token drafting game where you build a nature habitat across the Pacific Northwest, placing habitat tiles and wildlife tokens to score points based on varying scoring conditions. So this game should work well as a solo game, given that it's primarily a simple optimization puzzle with the odd sprinkling of ha, I took that animal that I think you probably wanted, but I also kind of want it too. I do like hate drafting though, because it does add an element of depth to this fairly simple game. But it's still a classic for a reason because the puzzle stands on its own. It's very clever and it's well varied between games. And solo here works because regardless of the people at the table, I'm still doing my little puzzle thing and having a good time. In it, you simply take your tile and then remove a tile and a token from the drafting area. And that's the AI. It's super simple, and honestly, it doesn't need to be strategic. From there, you just try to beat your previous scores. The experience feels like those apps that you play on your phone where you're just challenging yourself with different scenarios, but in a marginally good way. Oh, and the setup time here, it's beautifully short and it works in its favor. Yeah, Cascadia it has always been a simple game with a great amount of depth for what it is, and it's a freaking classic for a reason. Solo, I would give it a B, a high B, but a B. And next is Slay the Spire. Slay the Spire is a faithful tabletop adaptation of the beloved roguelike video game. You build a deck while ascending a spire of increasingly different encounters, choosing a path through different rooms, fighting enemies, acquiring relics, and selecting new cards to beat the final badass. I love how all the characters all play so differently, and they're all enjoyable to go through a run. And it's fun to sort of do your best to build your deck with many cards that are super varied and even double-sided because they can all be upgraded. Yeah, it's a deck builder that I love the most. It's one of the deck builders I love the most because it's just so ridiculously satisfying. Instead of just picking whatever is the best, I'm optimizing a specific build and really thinking about what fits perfectly, adding depth to decision space during a time that isn't really like direct gameplay, because a lot of times you're just upgrading your deck between fighting encounters. I really think this is one of the few roguelike games that actually captures that, like, that feeling you get of just, I'll just do one more run, that impulse. And I think that says a lot about this game. Now, the solo, of course, doesn't require an Atama, which is great, and the enemy behaviors, they're not overly complicated, but at the same time, they're not boring and repetitive, which gives me more time to focus on deck building, and that relic variety and card synergy has so much depth that each run feels so different because I'm doing my best to find a really fun and sort of broken combination. The whole game is just very satisfying. Now, I know a lot of people will be like, oh, what's the point? I'll just play the video game if I'm going to play solo. But that's silly, because it really is one of the best solo deck builders out there, aside from Mage Knight. Yeah, it's obviously more time consuming, and the setup here kind of sucks, and the price is certainly high, but I think the experience is mostly worth it. I'm digging Solo Slay so far. I prefer it cooperatively, but I would give this a solid A. This is a solid A co-op experience, or sorry, solo experience. It's an S tier co-op game. And next is Gaia Project. Gaia Project is an engine-building space colonization game where you develop a faction civilization across a hex-based galaxy, terraforming planets, advancing research, and building structures across multiple tracks. I'll be honest, I have never been a big fan of the sort of like spiritual sequels to Terra Mystica, like Gaia and Age of Innovation. I just find you can't really improve on Terra's already pretty awesome system. But obviously Gaia it's decent. It has the same faction asymmetry that makes Terra amazing, and solo play is satisfying. The Atama here is pretty competent and applies some pressure, and it did feel like one of the better solo Euro games. It managed to deny research track positions in a way that felt smart. Actually, competent isn't a good description here because it honestly is one of the better Atamas that I have experienced so far in my solo play. It was really easy to handle, and its decisions sort of made sense despite just playing against the same set of cards, because you don't resolve the card on its own, but rather the group of symbols. And those symbols they're easy to understand and internalize while you play, leaving you to focus on your own turn, which is exactly what you want in a solo Euro game. I want to solve my own cool puzzle and focus on that. My issue, though, is with, well, the same issue I have with all these derivatives, is that I feel I'm just scoring based on how much I like Terra Mystica, which of course is an awesome game. But regardless, there's lots of depth here, obviously rewards tons of replays and lots of really great decisions. No, I don't think it's as good as Terra Mystica. I know some of you do, and you people are traders, but it is a really good game, and solo mode is of course very good. I would give this an A tier. This is an A tier game. Next is Obsession. Obsession is a Victorian estate management worker placement game where you improve your manor, hire staff, and host guests to gain prestige and wealth. Obsession is a great game that Kim and I really enjoy. It has loads of charm and is very strict in adhering to its theme, almost slavishly so, to the sacrifice of mechanics. I'll never get over how possible suitors are they're so imbalanced. The guy is significantly worse than the girl. And when I asked the designer, he was just like, yeah, that's how it is in the books, which I kind of respected, that like he would just adhere to the theme so much at the sacrifice of properly balanced mechanics. It's kind of cool in its own way. Regardless, I do enjoy it, but the solo mode here felt a little tacked on. Like, I tried the campaign and the length of it felt like it was being padded, like filler episodes in One Piece. And while the game, it wasn't that interactive to begin with, I acknowledge that. I do miss the denial and trying to outdo my opponents and having more of a particular building type to get with a potential suitor. This is absent here because in solo, it's basically you just do whatever you want and just be efficient as possible. And even hiring the servants offers no real tension or excitement, since they just kind of stick around. They're always available to you to hire whenever you want them. And even the theme suffers here, just a little, because the romantic subplot is just kind of meaningless without other suitors. The pursuit just feels empty and doesn't carry the same emotional weight of the chase and the possibility of success or failure. In solo, you're uncontested, and that feeling makes the theme sort of just disappear and simply devolve into seeing the game as just a bunch of mechanics, and that element of the game is just a scoring mechanism. And I think if you're if you're stripping away the theme of this game, you're not going to like it as much because it is a very simple game. I love this game, you know, like don't get it twisted, but the solo isn't, it's not fun. And yeah, I feel it strips away the very thing that made the game great in the first place. So I'm giving this game solo, I'm giving this game a D. It's a D tier game. And next is The Elder Scrolls. The Elder Scrolls is a campaign cooperative adventure game where you play as customizable heroes exploring map-based campaign chapters, battling enemies, completing quests, and developing your characters across 3 connected narrative arcs. Let's just spoil things right now. This game is awesome. I love the skill advancement system and how it feels like the video game, since you gain proficiency based on how frequently you use them, sort of just like Morrowind or Skyrim. And the quest system creates a fairly good narrative, albeit obviously modular, with a lot of side questing and sort of regional events. And it's cool because when you're navigating the narrative solo, you can make genuine prioritizing decisions without feeling bad that you're sidetracking from the major campaign progression to do yet another side quest, like I do in every single Elder Scrolls game since Daggerfall, which is precisely why I almost never finish them. But here I get to finish them, because there's only 3. And it's great because the game just feels naturally replayable, because every campaign almost feels like it's a run in a rogue game where everything sort of like resets and I can experience different legacy elements using, you know, different characters that I've sort of hodgepodged together. This is one of those rare big gut box games where I think the game is very much worth the money. And it's not just about the components, because I don't usually give a shit most of the time about whether the game is whether the game is waterproof or not. I just recalled being in a meeting with one of the guys from Chip Theory, and like one of his big selling points, and he kept ragging on it, was like, this game is waterproof. And I was like, bro, I don't care. I'm not like taking a swim with the game. But I get what he was trying to say. He was just saying that like Chip Theory goes above and beyond in components, but we don't usually focus on components on this channel that much, but they are nice here. That was a big sidetrack. I do have to play this with Kim. She has said many times she wanted to play, but I just keep playing it solo. But you know, don't yell at me in the comments, okay? I'm a bad husband. I get it. I will play solo with her when I'll eventually at some point, and we'll bring it up in like the Trash or Treasure, and you can hear her thoughts and whether or not she thinks it's a good game. I would give this as a solo playing experience because that's the only experience I've had so far. I'd give that an S. It is an S tier solo playing experience. I'm a D tier husband, but this is an S tier game. And next is Lord of the Rings, the card game. Lord of the Rings, the card game, is a cooperative living card game set in Middle-earth, where you build a deck of heroes, allies, and events, then race through scenario cards while managing an ever-rising threat. I should preface this by saying I don't own the latest revised edition. Most of my plays come from the older, like the very first edition, so let me know if the new edition significantly improves things. I also made the mistake of playing true solo rather than two-handed when I played, which I think hurt my experience, since so much of the game's strength comes from sort of witnessing and adapting to these two heroes synergizing with one another. Playing with a single hero, I could rarely get what I needed at the right time, which sure is like the bane of any card game, but beyond that, the pacing just sort of felt off. It swung between too easy and like genuinely brutal, which took away from the storytelling the game was trying to deliver, I think. That said, I actually do enjoy the game. Deck building here is an immense amount of fun. I always love building a deck in this game. I would give the old solo version a B. Yeah, I'd suspect playing two-handed and probably with the new version might bump that score up. Let me know. But as it is right now, it's a B. And next up is Earthborne Rangers. Earthborne Rangers is a cooperative exploration card game set in the far future Earth, where nature has reclaimed civilization. You build a deck around a ranger character with chosen aspects and background, exploring locations and encountering wildlife. Defining your character around the specific aspects like spirit and fitness, etc., does a good job at defining your personalized character and your deck construction. While playing solo, the characters felt more like my own and a reflection of the choices I made throughout the narrative. Also, I had to play this solo because Kim does not give a shit about narrative games. Listen, I say this with all due love. She is not an imaginative person. She is like purely analytical. She does not care most of the time about theme and story. And when I read cards to her, she falls asleep. And the solo makes the valley feel far more like it's your own because it's not scripted and it's more about location discovery. So the vibe here is something very different than some broad and epic narrative. And, and when you encounter things, you're constantly reducing your cars to overcome obstacles, creating a cool puzzle and a bit of strategy that doesn't really require a partner to be particularly interesting. But having said that, it can also feel a little random as hell, and almost on the verge to becoming something like Vantage, which is a game I really hate. Here, I can continue where I left off, which adds that sense of permanence that I think these adventure games kind of need, which also means it gets me to keep exploring instead of doing all the same shit over and over and over again on the next run and making all that exploration that I did previously feel completely pointless. Although I will say that the more hours I get into this game, I'm starting to see a little repetition. I don't know if that'll continue, but it's a good game. It's still a good game. I would give Earthborne Rangers, it's a B. This is a B tier game. It is good. I think it's a nice little chill solo experience. I think I might include it in a big video that I'm planning where I talk about, spoiler, I've been playing 6 campaign games all at the exact same time. And I think I might want to make a video about that. I think I'll include this one. It's a good game. And next is A Feast for Odin. A Feast for Odin is a sprawling worker placement and puzzle game where you manage a Viking civilization, hunting, raiding, trading, and settling to fill your personal island boards with goods and clear negative income squares. I like some Rosenbergs now and then, and his tile laying games can be pretty enjoyable. Feast for Odin is probably one of the better ones. The spatial puzzle that really challenges your ability to optimize is satisfying and fairly novel between plays. And the action selection system is delightfully overwhelming with all the different action boards and distinct actions. But the problem is that when you play on your own, all these actions they're sort of yours to do with what you want. And the order activation many times for me just felt obvious because the optimal action sequence is dependent on your specific occupation combination. Like there doesn't seem to feel as though there was any interesting trade-offs. One action is, at least in my experience, was always better than another action. Couple that with a lack of competition to take the action spaces you need, and that sort of forces you to tactically adapt, and you have a fairly lukewarm experience. The actions are simple and always there for the taking, which I know some people will like because it will be a much more chill worker placement experience, but I think a dummy player would work better here. I think you're just sort of chasing your own previous score, and even that isn't particularly fulfilling. I would give this a C tier. I know this is a game much loved within the solo playing community, but I am not one of those people. Next up is Vantage. Vantage is a cooperative roll and write game where you use dice to navigate terrain, manage resources, and reach various goals, all to experience no story or purpose until the game is over and you fall asleep. I hate Vantage. It's a bad game. If you want more explanation beyond that, watch our review. I promise that even if you disagree with my take, it's the most entertaining review on Vantage on YouTube within this hobby space. I promise. I'll simply say that the game was solo anyway, which I guess is good, but nothing felt like it had purpose. I didn't feel like I evolved or changed as a character beyond boring surface level bullshit. Choices were always obvious and became super mundane once you got to the later half of the game, where you're just doing shit based on what color or tokens you have. Choices on cards were often purposefully nebulous and dumb. Like I'd see a picture where an action would be communicate, and I look at the picture and not see what it is I'm supposed to be talking to. It was silly. It was stupid. Vantage blows. It's a D tier game. It's a D tier solo experience. Actually, you know what? I did like the solo experience mildly better than the cooperative experience, where you're essentially tasked with the solo play, just essentially as you reading a card to the person sitting across from you. No, it's a D tier game. I was going to give it a C. It's a D. Next up is For Northwood. For Northwood is a solo trick-taking game where you play as a princess negotiating with 8 woodland rulers. Going forward, I want you to be aware of something. I actively dislike trick-taking as a mechanic, so take all my opinions on games that feature that mechanic with a grain of salt. I try to be mildly objective here, but bias is bias, and trick-taking is boring, in my opinion. I will admit that I do like that the trick-taking here feels more precise, because you have to win the right number of tricks rather than just like blindly winning as much as possible. So I guess sort of familiar to Fox in the Forest, which is a trick-taking game that I enjoy from time to time. For Northwood rewards a specific level of performance that isn't necessarily the maximum possible. So now instead of thinking like, oh, can I win this trick? You're asking if you should even bother winning it at all. It's a nice change of pace, I guess. But the game suffers from opening hand issues where some targets just are not achievable through no will of my own, like having a hand with no cards in the trump suit against a high target ruler, and there's just no mechanisms for identifying those unwinnable positions before it's too late. It kind of blows. And completing that same loop 8 times in a sequence during a single session, it gets really repetitive. And that initial novelty of that trick-taking experience sort of just evaporates over time. Again, I'm biased here. I would come in at a C for this game. If you like trick-taking, I don't know, let me know in the comments if you strongly disagree with what I feel about this game. If you, as a trick-taker enjoyer, also think it's a lukewarm game. It's a C tier for me. Next up is The Lord of the Rings, Fate of the Fellowship. Fate of the Fellowship uses the pandemic system where players cooperate with 13 different characters to defend the areas of Middle-earth while guiding Frodo toward Mount Doom. This is a very tight resource allocation, almost a tower defense game, because those baddies are coming and you have very limited resources and characters being a major resource to handle all of those threats. You have to choose which havens to defend, what threat cards require addressing, and when it's a good time to focus on Frodo's voyage to Mount Doom. It feels very satisfying, sort of navigating and doing your best to control all of these issues all coming at you at once when you're playing by yourself. I found at least. And I like the action economy with the characters where one receives 4 actions and another one just 1. It's some cool asymmetry that's fun to play around with, trying to decide, such a simple mechanic. It's just satisfying and surprisingly deep. And there's a good variability here too through the objective cards because you have to finish them before destroying the ring. And they're always like really different. So one game you might do a lot of like military focus where you're trying to control certain areas, while another game might have you doing a lot of character positioning and card management. It helps sort of to avoid this sort of single optimal strategy that some solo games suffer from. And I enjoy it for that. All in all, I think this is a good game, and I think if you purchase this primarily for solo play, even though it is a cooperative game, I don't think you'd be disappointed. It is an A-tier game. And next up is Star Trek Captain's Chair. Star Trek Captain's Chair is a cooperative deck building game where you command a Star Trek starship, running through missions, managing your crew, and engaging in combat against adversaries across a structured campaign. Now this game is based on the Imperium franchise, which I already reviewed. Those are really good games. Here you have 2 different solo modes, one where you just play by yourself and you get a high score, and the other where you play against a bot. I learned the game just doing the solo mode and then switched over to the bot, and honestly, I think I just stick with the solo. I don't think the bot added the necessary tension and tactics, and instead just felt like useless overhead. But the game itself, I love the crew management system. You get this huge roster of shipmates over time that feels like it's like this really neat tactical puzzle that evolves over the course of the campaign. Building your crew depending on the given mission felt like, building a magic deck kind of, where I'm trying to plan for each possible outcome, and the process was really fun and just a good overall experience. And that is aided by the deck building portion, where you get cards that reflect your ship's tech development and crew skills, which creates this awesome progression arc within each mission that sort of mirrors thematically Star Trek's premise of growing and learning as a crew as you explore. And you get a nice ramp where you're very constrained to start, but as time goes on and more challenges are presented, you become far more capable and versatile as you sort of feel yourself and your crew and your ship just like getting more powerful. I'm very happy with this one. I would give this one an A tier. It is a solid, very good solo game. And next is Hadrian's Wall. Hadrian's Wall is a flip and write game where each round you allocate resources across a densely packed player sheet, scoring renown, piety, valor, and discipline while defending against raiding picks. Now obviously this is mostly a solo game anyway, even though Kim and I do occasionally play this together. In the game you flip over a card which shows you the resources available and the defenses challenge you have to contend with at the end of the round. It's a cool dynamic because you can pick from these 2 cards that are presented to you. So you're doing your best to sort of balance the threat and the bonus. And then you just go to town marking off your sheets using the workers that you have to optimize the perfect combo as much as humanly possible. All the actions feel satisfying to chain, and there's a good amount of depth and choices here, though you essentially are just sort of filling in boxes. That will likely sound very tedious to many of you, and you're not entirely wrong. I have found that I have to play this game once in a while and not binge it, or I will get bored very quickly. Despite there being good variability between games and the various citizen tracks, providing this like unique twist on the general gameplay, like the gladiators getting stronger the more you train them. It's a nice thematic touch, and it does keep the game interesting. But if you play it too much, I don't think you're going to enjoy it. Obviously, the solo is fine here because, like I said, it's a solitary game mostly anyway. I would give this a B tier. Next up is Unstoppable. Unstoppable is a cooperative card crafting deck builder where you build power by inserting upgraded cards into sleeves to modify your abilities, which also boosts the power of your threats for the round. This is a wicked game, and I'll say this up front. If you're a solo gamer and you don't own this, you're crazy. You're crazy. I really want to try the Dungeon Crawler Carl, and just see what that's like. Let me know in the comments if you've tried it, and let me know if it's like just a generic reskin or if it generally feels like a different game. I haven't read the books. Is it a book? I think it's a book. I haven't read the book, so I know nothing about it. Also, let me know if it's a good book that I should read. I think this game takes the card crafting mechanic and sort of brings it to what is essentially its like final form. You insert your upgrades into sleeves and it modifies your cards and makes them more powerful. But it also increases the threat on the reverse side, which you'll later have to fight. It's perfect scaling and just provides more depth of choices on my turn, because now I'm wondering if it's worth upgrading just to have to face harsher opponents. It's a really clever, very simple, but beautiful touch. And that progress is further aided by the momentum system, where specific cards generate momentum tokens and things get like progressively more powerful, creating this escalation of tension and really making you feel like super powerful as a player, and yet still oddly cautious and worried. Yeah, this is definitely one of the better solo games out there. I know the back of the box says like cooperative, but I can't imagine somebody buying this and playing with other people because there's no cooperation at all. This is an S tier solo experience. And next is Heat Pedal to the Metal. Heat is a racing game where you manage a hand of speed cards controlling heat buildup and gear shifts through a modular track as you try and get ahead of automated opponents using a simplified movement deck. I will say that the AI does an okay job of replicating what a human would do, and I kind of hate it for that, because playing a racing game by myself, it feels a little pointless. But I'm putting my critic hat on and trying to be objective here and approach it as it is, which is an interesting puzzle that just so happens to feature the thematic dynamic of a race. And thankfully, the AI is very easy to control, so there's not a lot of bookkeeping bullshit, which would be very difficult because there's so many different cars. I will say that you need all the modules though, or it will get a little repetitive. But with all the different tracks and sponsors, the game is obviously much more enjoyable and has a lot more depth than what the simple mechanics would have you believe. I especially like the weather one just because it gives more to think about. Although I don't know why they don't seem to impact the AI at all. Although I guess having the weather impact the AI would reduce the overhead or increase the overhead stuff and just bog you down as a solo player. Like I said, I'm not the biggest fan of playing this at a solo, but it is good. I would give this a B. It is a B tier game. You can just play it solo, get better at it, and it gets so good at it that when you play it with friends, they'll never want to play with you anymore. That's winning. And next up is Harmonies. Harmonies is a tile placement game where you build a personal nature tableau, placing habitat tiles and animal tokens to match scoring conditions. So for solo, you're simply competing against a target score. And obviously solo works here because it's largely a solitary game anyway, like many of these animal-themed abstracts. I've always enjoyed Harmonies because there is just so much to think about on any given turn, and so much variability and permutations on any given turn, because you have those 3 tokens, right, that you take from the central board, and you want to place those on your board, and you can place those anywhere you want, and then you can optionally select an animal which could benefit you. There's a lot to think about, and I love when the game is challenging like this. It's enjoyable to be sort of overwhelmed, and Harmonies does a really great job of that, regardless of whether or not you play multiplayer or solitary. But obviously, like I've mentioned before, a simple scoring target is typically not my preferred way to play solo, as I found. And the big negative here in solo and in multiplayer is that the game can really screw you with luck, which of course, like I said, you feel it here. As you have this, like, you can have this great layout, but the animal cards that you need, that you know exist because you've played it a lot, they just never come up. They never come up. And you could have, what's good is that at least when you're solo, you don't get that thing where you see your friend just like, just dumbing his way through the game and just getting every single thing that just perfectly matches everything he's already built. That's annoying, but you don't have to experience that in solo. So I would give this a solid B. Harmonies is a solid B as a solo game. Next up is Endeavour Deep Sea. Endeavour Deep Sea is a worker placement and action chaining game where you lead a marine research expedition, deploying submarines, completing journal card objectives, hiring new workers with diverse abilities, and building tech tracks across a scenario-based structure. I love this game, and I wish I could have played it when it came out because it would have landed in my top 10 games of the year, for sure. Chaining those actions together and trying to be as efficient as possible feels super satisfying and fun, especially when you're trying to perfectly gauge which tracks you need to shoot up on, because each of those tracks is providing an incredibly great power each round. I'm still struggling to figure out which ones I should be prioritizing. Give me some tips in the comment section, because I'm leaning towards the one where you take workers off as being probably the most powerful one that you should probably always focus on first. The theme here obviously works well and resonates a bit better when you're playing on your own. Plus co-op was one of my favorite ways to play anyway, so the transition here was fairly obvious. Deep Sea is the only game I can think of that boasts a variety of different ways to play, and they all play equally well. It's a fantastic game. I love going through the different scenarios on each run. You have a clear goal, but you have to do your best to adapt to some of the randomness in the game, like the dives and the new areas you explore. So you never go into the game expecting to perform the usual first few moves. You know, like you're performing an opening move in chess, which is nice. Yeah, this is a great game. Super fun puzzle to solve on your own when you're playing solitary. This is an S tier game. Next up is Wingspan. Wingspan is an engine-building, bird-collecting game where you play cards representing bird species into 3 habitat rows, activating chain reactions of food, gathering, egg-laying, and card drawing. You can easily play this game solo without really sacrificing anything about the game that you enjoy, because it's a fairly solo experience from the start. The automa here does try to mimic a player, and honestly, I can't tell much difference because I'm half asleep anyway when I'm playing. So it must be doing its job really well. It removes cards and it gets in your way when you're trying to achieve certain goals, just like a human, so it's fine. We'll leave it at that. I don't want to talk about Wingspan on this channel that much. I don't hate it as many of you would believe, but I don't think it's a good game. Solo here is just like kind of serviceable. I would come in at like a low C. It functions fine as a solo game, I guess. I don't know. I don't want to play this. Next up is Leviathan Wilds. Leviathan Wilds is a cooperative boss battler inspired by Shadows of the Colossus. Players control climbers ascending the body of a massive corrupted Leviathan, destroying crystals before time runs out. This is it's a cool little game. Tons of variety with like 8 climbers and 8 different classes and lots of monsters in the pages of the spiral book thingy. And again, because it's cooperative, the solo mode works fine. I know there is an unofficial variant, but I only played the official solo mode, and I don't know much about the community made one. Let me know if it's really good. I saw some people talking about it online. I was going to play it, but then I just like, no, I'll just stick with what's in the base game. The game is a fairly simple action point game where you're deciding if you want to play a card for its effect or its action points. And I was told you had to play this one two-handed, so managing 2 climbers and trying to do your best to synergize between the 2 and delegate certain tasks to specific climbers. That the whole process was pretty fun. I found that I was engaged enough in smashing crystals and avoiding damage that I didn't miss playing with a friend as much as I thought I would. Even though I like those times where you're like falling off a Leviathan and somebody like tosses you a mushroom mid fall and saves you. It's pretty cool. You don't get that here, fortunately. And while not necessarily specific to solo, I do like the Leviathan's activation system because it occupies this great spot between plan coordination where you know what's in the deck and you do your best to account for the monster's actions, but you don't know the order they'll appear in. So you maintain a semblance of tension and excitement. It's a great balance between the two things. Yeah, I would come in at an A tier for this one. This is a fine little solo game. I really like it. It's enjoyable. Next up is ISS Vanguard. ISS Vanguard is a cooperative app-assisted campaign game where you command a spaceship crew, exploring alien planets, assigning crew to missions, and making lots of narrative decisions. It's cool that the app handles a lot of the bookkeeping and stuff, but Man, you when you're playing by yourself, you really just feel like it's a video game at sometimes. I don't know why that is, but it highlights the solo play sort of highlights that fact more. The gameplay itself is fine. I was playing two-handed and it was fun specializing my crew and exploring the alien planets, which is also app assisted because it reveals the terrain and events. So the game does a good job at nailing the sense of discovery, but again, it made me feel like I was playing a video game. The app dependency is just, it's too intrusive in a solo play, and the setup, considering the game is heavily app assisted, is also tedious and long. The campaign is also long, which I guess is great, but it also feels like it lacks focus and it gets really repetitive sometimes. It's as if I was experiencing loads upon loads of like filler episodes in a show. Eventually, I just kind of gave up and stopped playing. But I did have some fun with it, especially at the beginning. But it kind of tapered off. I would give the solo play of ISS Vanguard a C. It's a C tier game. Next up is Seventh Continent. Seventh Continent is a choose-your-own-adventure exploration card game where you survive a cursed continent by drawing trading cards and managing an action deck. This game, along with Vantage, are two games I will never understand why people enjoy them. It was a fun for a few turns, but I soured on the experience fairly quickly. Like the game is huge. I'll give it that, and it's certainly interesting, but sessions were lasting way longer than I allow for a game this shallow. And even playing on my own, it was still taking too long. I respect the game for, in many ways, sort of pioneering the genre of explorative-based campaign games, mini like roguelike runs. But man, the thing just, it didn't age well when I revisited it, which was very recently. Because the game really did feel like going around experiencing random bullshit, and the disjointed narrative can be forgiven sometimes if the underlining game and mechanics or at least mildly interesting, like say something like Earthborne. But it's kind of vapid here, which is funny because it's a really punishing game. Like it's hard, but it's also shallow. The fun, I think, is supposed to come from the action deck and pushing it through to complete actions while understanding there are curse cards in the deck and that can end your run. But like everything else, it's completely random nonsense. Here's the thing. I've heard people like to call this sort of like a roguelike, like a Dark Souls, okay? And I know my death was my fault when I play those types of games. That's not the case here, okay? Many times your death will come and you'll have no control over it. I love that it's not like handholdy like Vantage, but it's still just a random card flipping game, and I definitely dislike it. I would give this a D. Yeah. I gave it a D when I first played it years back. I give it a D now. Next up is Arydia. Arydia is a campaign RPG style adventure game where you control heroes exploring traditional fantasy world that emulates a standard role-playing game, complete with NPC interactions, questing, and an ongoing story. A lot of emphasis here is on the narrative and world building, which I appreciated, and I think it even offers some fairly good tactical combat. The combat, it's not as good as something like a Gloomhaven, but the narrative the narrative is quite a bit better, even if you're playing on your own. Let me just say it's totally acceptable to be by yourself and just do funny voices when you read aloud the NPC dialogue. I did it, and I am not a crazy person, so it's okay if you do it.
My daddy says they're making a mistake letting people like you in. I hope he's not wrong.
Don't judge me. But it's the kind of game where the more you put in, the more you sort of get out. The faction and reputation mechanics and the various NPCs, they're all worth investing in because the game does remember your choices and gives you a strong sense of authorship and autonomy over the story that you're essentially shaping on your own. And the character customization helps that a lot too. It's not as strong as something like Elder Scrolls, but it's still pretty damn fun. And it is a fairly linear narrative here, unlike something like Seventh Continent or Vantage, which I prefer, at least within this game's mechanics. But the game does sometimes feel like a lot of side quests with a fairly loose, overarching narrative that kind of just like barely connects it. Still though, it's a cool game. I would give this B tier. I go high B tier. Next up is Under Falling Skies. Under Falling Skies is a solo puzzle game where you defend a series of cities from an alien invasion by rolling a set of dice and assigning them to columns of your base to activate defenses and research. I had to play this on Tabletop Simulator since I couldn't get the physical game, and it's a shame because this one is pretty damn good. I'll always gravitate towards the solo games that are made to be solo because you can feel it through every single mechanic as you're playing. The dice assignment here is like super cool, where each number determines the power of the action and how far it advances the alien ship. It's elegant and provides a good amount of depth, making dice placement a liability and an asset sort of at the same time. It's a cool decision space to be in and provides some much needed tension, which is something a lot of solo games, at least in my experience over the year, kind of lacks. All the challenges felt mechanically unique with different city structures and base layouts and starting conditions. You'll have one city sort of emphasizing like research and another one with good defenses, and all of them contributing to force you to adapt to each individual scenario and not go in with like a preset plan, which is nice. Lots of replayability here, which is great. And it's fun going up the research tracks and getting new base abilities and trying to balance those sort of like long-term gains with short-term survival demands. Again, another element where Under the Skies provides like good tension for a solo game. Yeah, I think this one is an A. I think it should be in everybody's solo game collection, especially since it's pretty cheap. This is an A tier game. Next up is Bullet. Bullet is a real-time puzzle game where you defend against waves of bullets on your personal board, racing to clear patterns and combo abilities before time runs out. Bullet is a fantastic game and one of my favorite real-time games. Feels super unique when you're playing, but man, I really love multiplayer. I love the real-time element and how frantic it feels. And while the game does have a time pressure element to it to keep that tension in solo play, it doesn't hit the same way as when I play beside an opponent. I really love when I send something their way that they don't know how to deal with, just to hear the disappointment sound as I laugh and continue my own like frantic puzzle. It's a small quibble, I guess. But it is still a very good implementation. The heroines all play very differently and have a bunch of different powers, and it's sort of fun to go through on your own and learn those heroines more and see what they can do and see what compositions they favor. And like the multiplayer, the difficulty escalates like a good game of Tetris, where you have to deal with more and more bullets and more complex patterns. And on your turn, you still feel that escalation, and it's fun overcoming that personal challenge of clearing as many waves as you can. So this is one of those few games where I'm kind of okay with beating my old score. So I would give this one a B. I prefer multiplayer, but it's still a good solo little puzzle. Yeah, this is actually one of the first games we reviewed on this channel. So level 99, hit me up. Give me some more sets. We need some more cute anime girls. Next up is Eldritch Horror. Eldritch Horror is a cooperative Lovecraftian adventure game where investigators travel the globe, closing gates, gathering clues, and preventing an ancient one from awakening. Man, we used to play this game religiously, almost as much as we played the original Arkham Horror. And I did play solo long ago, long before I even know what solo was like really a thing and not some like weird thing that weirdos did by themselves in secret. Now playing solo is much more open and you don't have to hide being a solo gamer, which is nice. The game works fine on its own since you just do the game two-handed, and the abilities on the individual investigators are really easy to manage since they're all fairly simple. Naturally, you're just playing solo here to remove the coordination overhead of multiplayer, allowing you to make all decisions yourself. I will say the game loses a little bit of its theme when you're playing on your own, as the story is obviously a little haphazard, and I did find myself sort of skipping a lot of the reading and just getting to what I had to do, like, okay, what gates do I have to close? Cool, I don't care about this flavor text, which is unfortunate, but maybe that's my own fault. It's still fun, but it's tough because the game is also long and takes a while to set up, which are two negatives to a lot of solo plays. And of course, like always, that Mythos deck can feel very random, and there is zero way to plan for what's upcoming. I think more modern games have done a good job of balancing that sort of tension and fun from elements of randomness and the strategy and tactics of planning for like what's to come. This here is all pretty much random, but I still have a soft spot in my heart for this game, and I always will. And I think it is a good solo experience. I would give this a B. This is a B tier game. Next up is Nemo's War. Nemo's War is a solo-focused adventure game set aboard Captain Nemo's Nautilus. You sail the seas, battling warships, conducting science, and building your infamy across 4 different motivations, all to accomplish your current scenario. The pusher luck in this game is really fun and fulfilling because every bad thing really does feel like something you could have done differently. It was your choice to push your crew to accomplish that task, and it always feels better in these types of games when you don't feel your agency being stripped away from you by story beats, you know? And I do really like the four motivations. These are the things you risk, like science and exploration, because they give each solo playthrough a different feeling that goes beyond different win conditions, of which there are many. But fundamentally, you always have a different approach to each game, which is nice. This is all aided, of course, by buckets of theme, not just the cards you're reading, which are all great, but in the actions you take and the general feeling of exploration that you legitimately feel when you're playing it. I do, however, find the pacing to be a little off sometimes because it can have a lot of difficulty spikes here and there, especially in the higher difficulty settings. And I don't mind the challenge though, but the setup is also fairly involved, and perhaps I wasn't fully honest. Yes, there are times when the event deck can feel a little stacked against you and kind of beyond your control. But I still play this game and I enjoy it from time to time. I'd give this an A. This isn't a solid A game. Next up is Marvel United. Marvel United is a cooperative superhero game using locations and villain cards to drive encounters. Players take turns playing hero cards, triggering abilities, and chaining symbols to defeat enemies, rescue civilians, and take down the villain's schemes. This is a game I think I will eventually enjoy when I play with kids. I keep mine around in the hopes that I can one day play with my future kids, because as it is, I find the damn thing pretty boring. I really do want to love it. It's easy to learn, and I do appreciate the planning of your actions through the card chaining system. It's satisfying sometimes when things go right, but it's more fun with others at the table, and those other players add another element where I'm trying to plan my own chain while also complementing what they're doing. And while I still don't like the game, I do enjoy it more as a multiplayer game. I'm fine with simple games, but there has to be depth inside that simplicity. Like, think Five Tribes. That shallowness that exists in a game means that unless I'm gobbling up hundreds of sets and collecting every single superhero expansion, I get bored really quickly after having played the base game a few times. Like, I feel this game is built with that sort of concept in mind, and it gets kind of annoying really fast, this constant churning of expansions. And even the base set characters, they kind of feel pretty similar over a certain amount of time. And the cards themselves, many of them just sort of feel like repeats of other cards mechanically, which is pretty sad. The base box just sucks, and I'm not reviewing an entire system. I'm reviewing it mostly just on the base game, and that base set, I think I have the Avengers or something. I've heard the Marvel one is better. I will try it sometime, but for as it is right now, I give it a D. Next up is Anachrony. Anachrony is a worker placement and engine building game set in a post-apocalyptic future where factions use time travel to borrow resources from their future selves. Many consider the bot in this game to be one of the best solo bots around. That's what I've read online, at least. It does a great job denying places without requiring heavy management, and the factory board does feel like a real opponent. It's really well done solo experience. Mindclash, I think, crushes every game when it comes to solo. They know how to build a good bot. Anachrony is a notoriously long game, as most Mindclash games are, but I will say playing this solo, things seem to move really quickly, and it was super refreshing. I had more time to sort of plan out and execute my own actions without having to watch other players sort of fumble around. Instead, I use that chronobot and resolve its actions in like seconds. And what's cool is that while those actions are randomized, you can still see which actions are possible. It's about as close as you're going to get to being able to like emulate sort of sussing out other players, which is kind of interesting for a bot to be able to replicate that. Aside from the bot, though, the game is fantastic. It's Anachrony, right? Like, even if it's just a gimmicky theme and you're just taking a loan, I'm aware of this. I don't care. It does feel like time travel, and it's a hell of a lot of fun. Anachrony is easily one of my favorite worker placement games. There is just so much to think about on any given turn, and I love it for that. I will say there's lots of things about multiplayer that I do miss while playing solo, so I'm probably going to settle on an A instead of an S, but it's like, this is a quality experience. If you own the game, you should give it a run solo player, because it is very good. Next up is Paladins of the West Kingdom. Paladins of the West Kingdom is a worker placement game in a medieval setting where you recruit citizens, construct buildings, and defend against outsiders. I love playing this with Kim as a two-player game, but the bot here does work very nicely, doing the usual denial, and it does race for various outposts as well, which is cool. We haven't played this one in a while, so it was weird playing without Kim, but I'm kind of happy I did. It works fairly well as a solo game too, because there isn't There isn't anything here in the solo experience that you're really sort of missing in the multiplayer because it is kind of a solitary game. It's funny that just that simple design mechanic of having to choose the paladin you play for the round and on future turns or later in the game is a really cool. And it's a big draw for me for this game because otherwise it really is just like get the resources, spend the resources, and move up tracks. The powers that you get from those paladins, they really set the pace for the round, and it pushes you to tactically adapt to this what you've been given, basically what you choose, while still providing you the power to plan for the future. It's a cool decision space. I will say that as time goes on, I am getting a little bit bored with the game as it's starting to feel a little repetitive. I still enjoy it, but I don't love it as I once did. Perhaps not every game is meant to last forever. Still, though, I would say Paladins is a solid solo experience. I'd give it a B. This is a B tier game. Next up is Life of Amazonia. Life of Amazonia is a strategic meeple placing game that combines bag building and pattern building. Players will restore land, place various animals, and plant trees to enrich their jungle. Life of Amazonia is a game that has grown quite a bit on me over time since I last played it on during my solo gaming documentary. There's lots of cool decisions. There is some randomness, but it all feels as though that randomness can be sort of mitigated, and there's meaningful ways to find different paths to complete the scenarios. It's generally pretty fun to try to get the gold medal ranking in each scenario. It's fun. It's interesting. I'm not a big fan of the scoring sometimes, though, because it does this weird thing where the bot scores on trees and the aquatic path, and their path at the end of the game are sort of like, how am I remembering this correctly? I think they're subtracted from yours. It feels convoluted and unnecessary. But whatever, it's still a good game, and that's, like I said, that's a minor problem. I would still come in at a B for this game. It is a B tier solo experience. It's good. Next up is Dawn of the Zeds. Dawn of the Zeds is a solo tower defense game where you defend the town of Farmingdale against waves of zombie hordes, managing heroes, barricades, resources, and military units across an escalating crisis. Going around as a survivor in a zombie apocalypse, doing your best to kill zombies and rescue civilians, all while managing your resources and defenses, is a hell of a lot of fun. There are lots of different scenarios, so maybe one game you'll be surviving as long as you can, like a tower defense game, or another you'll have to like rescue certain survivors, or another one might have you like rebuilding your base. There's just lots of variety, keeps solo player coming back every single time. And what's cool is that you kind of find yourself getting attached to certain characters. So while it might make mechanical sense to sacrifice someone to gain resources or whatever, you'll instead do your best to save them or just be cautious and sort of like stealthily approach and complete missions instead. But there is a lot of unpredictability here where your characters will sometimes feel as though they're facing with like a human killing machine. But that lack of predictability is often exactly what makes the game exciting. So it's a double-edged sword. It's fun to get those last stand type moments when it's just you defending the town from destruction. There is a lot of strategy here with a fairly active community. Like you can go online and people have written tons and tons of strategy guides, which is really cool. And it's always a good sign for a game when the community is that active and specifically active within the strategy side. It tells you that the game has a lot of depth. I would give this game an easy A. This is a great solo game, and if you've never played it, you have to give it a try. It's very good. Next up is Frostpunk. Frostpunk is a survival colony builder where you manage a coal-powered city in a catastrophic ice age, balancing heat, food, hope, and discontent, and a slew of more dilemmas and escalating bad events. You know how I stated many times that the ease of setup and play is important to solo games? We'll throw all that shit out the window because Frostpunk is a beast to set up and to play. But I kind of think it's worth it because the game is just pure fun. The complexity in this game is one you learn over time as things sort of like slowly escalate, and the actions themselves are all fairly simple. It's challenging and enjoyable, trying to mitigate the upcoming tragedies. And there are some serious tragedies in this game with lots of moral dilemmas where sometimes you can optimize your way out of the crisis, forcing you to engage in real ethical trade-offs. I mean, like, those kids, okay, those dirty, useless kids, they have to learn to work at some point. Why not when they're 6 years old? Child labor. Tabletop Turtle endorses child labor, but only in post-apocalypse scenarios. There is loads of strategy here amongst all the events and what feels sometimes like chaos. You have to consider every factor during every phase and every turn because the game is going to try to kill you and your colony. push yourself too far on the outskirts and you might kill your villagers in the cold. But if you don't push them enough, and you won't get the resources you need to keep other people alive in the colony. And these choices are all yours to make, and not necessarily just like random dice rolls or something. Now, this game apparently plays multiple people, but I don't see why you would ever do that. This is a solo game, and it's a big game at that, so you're not going to play it all the time. But when you do, I think you're going to have a great time. I would give this. This is not a game that's going to be everybody's cup of tea. I get that, but I really liked it. It is an S tier game. Next up is This War of Mine. This War of Mine is a deeply thematic cooperative survival game set in a besieged city during war. You manage civilian and survivors, scavenge for food and supplies, all while making morally devastating decisions. I love that this is following Frostpunk, because this is another sort of like moral dilemma style game when you're deciding, who would die, who should eat, who should risk their lives to scavenge outside the base. And if you really want to get into it and suspend disbelief, there's a pretty engaging narrative here that isn't necessarily the typical like 3-act structure or overly structured at all. but it is engaging, and it's interesting to shape that narrative and make it your own. It's fun. It's a fun game. This game, though, is not balanced. The combat here is brutal and random, and sometimes you're just chucking a dice and you're just seeing what happens. One day you could have you getting just the right loot you need when you're scavenging, and another will have you getting your head blown off by a sniper. I don't think you have as much control in this narrative as something you in like Frostpunk, but it also means the mechanics here are far simpler, so you can focus on the narrative that you are having, and even if you're in this sort of bind where you're just getting pummeled by bad luck, I don't know, it still creates this fun little story. But when you do make choices, they do feel meaningful and authentic. If you're willing to put up with the randomness, you'll get attached to your group as you watch them sort of like continually suffer, and then get happy when they manage to scrounge up like simple luxuries like coffee or something. It's a really interesting game that's worth a play, even if this is not your preferred genre. I think every person who plays solo needs to play this War of Mine at least once. This is an A-tier game. Next up is The Anarchy. The Anarchy is a solo card game set during the English Civil War between King Stephen and Empress Matilda. Players manage a faction of nobles fighting battles, negotiating alliances, and navigating political instability across a historically flavored campaign. Despite the massive rulebook, this game it's not that hard, and everything is fairly logically displayed on the sheets themselves. And really, it's just a resource management game, like Hadrian's Wall. Here, the stress is on defense, and the interesting mechanic where your resources expire during each round, which is neat because it gets you thinking about actions differently, because you might hold off on one space, even though it gives you a bonus, because you can't use that bonus for this particular round just yet. But like I said, this is primarily a defense game because you face off at the end of the round against a good amount of attack cards that increases as the game continues. That all sort of require unique defenses, and all from like different areas of the castle. So I guess it's a tower defense game in some way. And of course, you're doing all this to score points and eventually just start going through the scenarios, which are all fairly cool and pretty unique. But like Hadrian's Wall, there's a lot of like crossing off boxes, and this is a fairly heavy flip and right game. I think the game plays well solo. It does play a little long for what it is. Most games seem to last about, I found it was like 2 hours. And this game doesn't even have the shared attack system like in Hadrian's Wall, sort of stripping it of almost any interaction at all. But again, we're talking about solo. I think I put this at a C. I don't like it as much as Hadrian's, but it is a decent game. Next up is Friday. Friday is a classic solo-only deck building game where you play as Friday, helping Robinson Crusoe survive on a deserted island. This is one of the grandfathers of solo gaming. I was pretty excited to try this one out, actually. It's got a nice little small box, and it's easy to play, although it's harder to get better at. And much like Robinson, there will be times where you feel like you did your absolute best, and the luck just was not on your side. But you have some control over that. You have some balance. You have to balance losing some fights in the early game to sort of plan out for doing better in the future and tackling future ordeals. It's a good little balance that you have to perform there. Because when you defeat a fight card, it sort of flips, adding a new ability, but as a result, things get stronger. And sort of like Unbreakable, I guess. You're balancing when to improve and when you need to overcome things. I think there is a good amount of decision space for what is a super light game. It's one of those solo games that feels genuinely addictive, and thankfully, it's cheap as hell. No, it's not going to tell some like rich and deep story, but mechanically, it's a well-made game that should give you a bit of fun if you're on your own and you have like 20 minutes to spare. I give this a B tier. It's a solid classic game. Next up is 20 Strong. 20 Strong is a deck-based game system where players progress through a deck of cards, each featuring unique challenges. The core loop is pretty straightforward. You flip encounter cards, fight enemies by rolling and assigning dice, survive events, and eventually you face the boss. All aided by your health, strategy, and recovery, which dictates your hit points, item slots, and number of dice. I played the Tanglewood set, which has you earning gold from enemies to bribe tougher opponents, which is neat because it gives you a better way to sort of mitigate some of that luck, which is nice. What's cool here is the deck design. Each of the 3 primary decks plays differently. Red uses like a cool Slay the Spire style dungeon map. Gold uses like building your own enemy row in a push your luck fashion. And white uses a more traditional like exploration structure. Each deck includes 5 heroes, uniquely designed enemies, and scouting mechanics to prevent upcoming threats. Everything plays fairly quickly, and it's easy to follow. No, it's not a purely strategical game, but it's pretty challenging and it is entertaining. Ultimately, I think this is kind of like, it kind of feels like Chip Theory's answer to Final Girl. And I would give 20 Strong, for what it is, for how quick it is and how easy it is to learn, I give it an A. It's an A tier game. And that is it. That is 50 or 60 plus games, all tier ranked for your pleasure. I know there's going to be some games that you're going to disagree with my rankings venomously. Let me know in the comment section. I read all of them, although I may not always respond to all of them. I like to be active within this community. If you liked this, obviously leave a like. And what the hell? I got like 50% of the people that watch these videos don't subscribe. What are you doing? What are you doing with your life? You gotta subscribe. If you're not gonna join Patreon and give me all your hard-earned money, just subscribe. That helps too. And look at this, Because I listen to the people, I'm gonna display up here right now the tier listing so you can all just like look at it, because I know you all just skip to the end of the video anyway, even though this took me like fucking 3 or 4 hours to film and dozens and dozens of hours to edit that all those hours down into something that's manageable and watchable. And you're just skipping to the end because you hate me, but that's fine. I want to please the people. So here it is. Yeah, thank you so much for watching. I love doing these, but I never wanted this channel to be like a tier listing channel, so I don't want to do too many of them. But I am always open to suggestions on what the next thing I should be tier listing. I don't have any plans in the near future. The last one I did was like months ago. The conclusion is over. Goodbye. Bye, guys. I will see you in the next one, which will be something. I don't know what I have planned. Goodbye.